their much beloved bishop.
Thank you, Linda, for that introduction here. And for our television viewers, you can see the square and all the crowds there slowly leaving just before the square was totally full of people, and all the main avenue there leading into St. Peter's Square. The authorities estimated over 200,000 people were present. 250,000, I correct myself. More and more were arriving as the celebration began, so 250,000, a quarter million people gathered in the square, what the square could hold, and the main avenue, Via della Conciliazione, leading into the square. It's amazing when you look at how these celebrations are handled and how they're able to manage these crowds also on this short notice. And for our viewers and listeners also who've been following this very moving celebration, this solemn requiem mass for Pope Francis, some of you may be tuning in now, and what we're waiting on is the coffin that will be taken from St. Peter's Basilica and then exiting part of Vatican City and then going through the streets of Rome to St. Mary Major, the papal basilica just east and south of the Vatican, about 4 to 5 kilometers. And we're going to accompany you as that happens.
And Thaddeus, just to add on to what you were saying there about the flocks of people that filled the square. So we were all here quite early this morning, 6 o'clock, and the faithful had already been flooding the streets waiting to be let in, so to speak. And it was quite a scene when they eventually did open the gates, and all of these pilgrims, all kinds of people, young, elderly, religious, people with push chairs, running to try and get front row seats to what was a beautiful mass in the end. And it's a beautiful day in Rome as well, as Linda said. The square was gorgeous, and I can only imagine that the procession through Rome, Pope Francis' last trip from St. Peter's Basilica to St. Mary Major, on such a beautiful day, he couldn't have been sent off in a nicer way, I'd say.
Yes, I agree. The itinerary chosen is the straightest itinerary between St. Peter's Basilica and St. Mary Major, but it crosses some of Rome's, well, I mean, Rome's all beautiful, but some of the most famous landmarks. So it will be going down Corso Vittorio Emanuele. It will cross the river first and foremost. It will arrive in Piazza Venezia, where the altar of the fallen soldier is, and that also is the beginning of the incredible Via dei Fori Imperiali, where the Roman Forum is. So he will be carried in procession, we call it a funeral procession, through the tombs and through the city of ancient Rome, with the statues of Julius Caesar and the temples, and before the Colosseum. He's going to pass in front of the Colosseum, and then he's going to turn onto Via La Bicana and walk up Via Merulana. It's quite a steep uphill, with St. John Lateran behind him, finally to arrive at St. Mary Major, which hosts, as we all know, the famous icon Salus Populi Romani, the patron saint of Romans, and the Virgin who Pope Francis himself was so beloved. It was his beloved icon.
So not only is he moving to rest by his beloved icon, as you described it, but the way in which he's reaching it, he's passing almost through the 3 papal basilicas. It's quite a homage, I'd say.
No, you're right. There are 4 papal basilicas. The other one is St. Paul's outside the walls, which is off the route. But yes, you're right. St. Peter's, very close to St. John Lateran, which is the Bishop of Rome's basilica, and finally St. Mary Major.
And of course, St. John Lateran there, the Cathedral of Rome. It's actually the Cathedral Basilica of the Diocese of Rome as well, and all in that area. The images we're seeing here now, many of the diplomatic corps and world leaders would have exited through that area there, or are going to leave from this area, which is Piazza Santa Marta, just behind the Basilica there. So we're seeing some of that live as they exit the Basilica. And throughout this morning, we've had stunning photography. I think it's definitely a novelty of having some of the drone photography we've seen. Just these stunning images of this very moving and powerful celebration, this wonderful tribute, as well as the Basilica itself, the square itself, the images, the particular poignant moments during this, the liturgy, the Requiem Mass, have been captured with this stunning photography. And then our television viewers can see as well, this weather is absolutely perfect. It couldn't be a better day, very comfortable temperatures, strong sunshine, and just very light winds. And it's always powerful seeing the coffin in the square and then the pages of the Gospel there kind of patiently changing in the wind there. Those are very strong or powerful symbolic moments there that we all lived, as well as the tribute from the Eastern churches at the end of the funeral when they paid their tribute to Pope Francis in the languages and chants of their own traditions, part of the hugely diverse Catholic and Eastern traditions and Christian traditions around the world represented there in this way. We can see here.
We saw Jews, we saw Sikhs, we saw Sheiks, we saw
indeed interreligious representation.
The Indian indigenous Littlefoot, I think his name
Little
is.
Chief, I think.
Little
From
Chief.
Canada? Yes.
From Canada.
We saw many heads of state. We saw, of course, the College of Cardinals almost complete, although I think there are some cardinals who still have to arrive in Rome for this coming week, which will see them gathering in general congregations during this time of sede vacante. They will be discussing the days to come, the date of the conclave, and of course they will be administering to the Holy See as the sede vacante tells us. It is a vacancy, and they are governing the Vatican at this time.
Yes, as you mentioned, Linda, too, the interreligious representation was particularly was amazing in terms of the numbers and the various representatives and
Belining the streets.
And we've seen some of the images of the entirety of the route that you described earlier. Thousands and thousands of people have taken to the streets to say goodbye for the last time, and of course everyone will be able to visit St. Mary Major and visit Pope Francis's tomb, but this really is, you know, his the day that we are dedicating to him to say goodbye. And Rome, and not only Rome, the faithful have really come out for that.
Very symbolically also, we know that a group of mostly poor people who are assisted by charities will be at St. Mary Major to welcome him to his final resting place. The Pope of the peripheries, the Pope of the people, is very aptly receiving his last embrace from those whom he loved the most, the smallest, the weakest, the last in society.
we see the whole entourage there from high above. Now they've just exited Vatican City. They're on the avenue here that leads to a tunnel that then crosses over the Tiber River and will take them into the historic center. People lining the streets there, and we've had plenty of reports of people lining the streets across the city since this morning. So while many were crowded into St. Peter's Square, which had at least around 50,000 until they had to kind of close it off due to the numbers, and then so many hundreds of 150,000 others in the avenues surrounding the area. We have many people as well, in addition, lining the streets or the sidewalks to pay their final respects to Pope Francis and the entourage here, moving at a pace that gives people time to take in the moment as it happens.
And these aerial images that were being shown are they're really quite impressive. They're beautiful. You can see the car carrying the Pope, and then above what I believe to be the Vatican gardens, the Pope's gardens, this beautiful green area, which I'm sure he must have wandered through so often. And it's beautiful to have them both together as he makes his way to St. Mary Major. There really are a lot of people out there. You can hear the applause as he makes his way down.
You were saying, Francesca, the Vatican gardens, which he probably walked. I thought it very beautiful that in the Rogito, the last act, which they placed in his coffin, there was a summary of his life and of who he was and of his pontificate. And in particular, he was described as a simple and popular pastor in his archdiocese in Argentina, who traveled far and wide by metro and by bus, living in a flat, preparing his own food because he felt like a normal person.
And I think he made everyone he met feel like he was a normal person, and that they were meeting a normal person. And the Pope of the peripheries, that's really what he was. And especially talking about his traveling, and he really traveled the world. His penultimate trip, which Linda, you were on, and he really went to the other side, the forgotten side of the world.
Absolutely. I must say I've had the privilege to be on 2 faraway trips. One was the one you're just mentioning that took us to Indonesia, Timor-Leste, Papua New Guinea, and Singapore, but even the year before to Mongolia to visit the smallest Catholic flock in the world, 1,500 Catholics of the entire Mongolian population. So yes, he traveled into the peripheries of the city, going to visit prisoners, going to visit elderly people, poor people, always welcoming refugees, but he'd also travel across the world to the remotest and furthest away places from the Vatican, obviously that is. And people always came out in floods to welcome him. I'll never forget landing in Timor-Leste, which is a tiny and new country, and the half of the entire population, 750,000 people, came to the Mass. The floods of people just there to welcome him. Very moving.
And they're countries that are so far off the grid, we barely even hear of them. And another gesture that was one of his final gestures was he visited the prison. He went to Regina Coeli, I believe, which is a prison in the Trastevere area of Rome, not too far from the Vatican. And it's a symbolic gesture that he does every year at Easter, and of course with him having been unwell, we weren't sure whether he would have done, and the fact that he did meant so much to prisoners worldwide, but all marginalized people. And I think the Pope himself said, you know, it could have been me, it could have been anyone in your position, and that awareness that he had and that he transmitted to the people who were suffering the most, I think is one of the greatest legacies that he could be leaving behind.
And it's really fitting that the people who will welcome him and say their goodbye at St. Mary Major are, as you've mentioned, the people who suffer, the homeless, migrants, people who are marginalized. So people who've met him before as well. We've been told around 40 of them will be there. There might be more or less, but some of them have actually met Pope Francis. Sometimes before going on an apostolic journey, or during religious feasts, he would have them over at Santa Marta and meet with them, just to...
He's crossing the bridge. He's crossing the Tiber.
We see, yes.
Yeah. This is the beginning of the Via Corso Vittorio Emanuele. He's passing here. Some very symbolic places.
Indeed, and he's just, as you mentioned, crossed over the river. We saw that beautiful drone photography and that live video that we'll have more of here. And
yes, it's remarkable also it's the first papal funeral, can we say, with this advanced technology, digital technology that is really giving everyone the possibility to almost be there.
Indeed, for our television viewers, they're seeing some context in a way that's revolutionary, I would say. We have, of course, a vehicle preceding the entourage, or the entourage, or the
procession.
The procession, and you can see all the crowds of people on either side of the street as they wave there. And again, it's particularly poignant and touching that, again, he'll be welcomed by the people he's always reminded us not to forget, the ones who need our help, the homeless, migrants, and refugees. And
I must say, in these days in which tributes have been pouring in, again and again I've been hearing he was a voice for those who had no voice. So hopefully that voice will continue to resonate.
Well, right until the very end, his final appearance on Easter Sunday, he dedicated his words, his godly blessing, which someone else read for him, but he dedicated it to the people suffering war, and he has always been a voice for the people in countries where everything is being destroyed by arms. Pope Francis has been #1 advocate for disarmament. He's been the #1 advocate for solutions to be reached, for diplomatic talks to take place. He has reiterated every time he made an appeal that war is a defeat. It's become a slogan.
You have read so often for him at the general audience, which is always an occasion for him to reiterate this appeal. And Francesca, you wrote that lovely farewell that we published on the web about the Pope of Peace, which particularly, I think, resonated with you.
I have to say that one of the it's a very touching moment. It's almost difficult to know what to say.
I think most people can see and watch, but many people are also perhaps following on radio. Yes, it is very solemn, it's very sad.
At the same time, it's a celebration of his life and ministry, and it's particularly poignant in this Jubilee of Hope as well, that he inaugurated, that he opened. And so I think, I would imagine that would be the, and of course it is the key theme as well that we celebrate in a very special way at Easter at this time, a time of hope, of birth, new life, life in a new and transformed way. And so I think all today has been a wonderful tribute to Pope Francis and his ministry. And there we see the icon Salus Populi Romani. It's a panel made of cedar wood. It's about 117 by 79 centimeters, more or less. It's quite large when you bring it down to the ground. It's mounted in the chapel there higher up, and it depicts half figure of Our Lady with the child Jesus in her arms. And the icon again is especially dear to the Roman people and highly linked to the identity of Rome and the popes. And as we saw with Pope Francis, we have that special dedication to Our Lady in this icon of Rome.
He visited the Basilica just recently during his convalescence at Casa Santa Marta after he was discharged from the hospital on the 23rd of March. He actually, on his way back from the hospital, he stopped to pay tribute to Our Lady.
We see those arriving, some of the cardinals and prelates who are arriving here for this moment before the coffin is taken into the basilica for burial. This moment that will take place here outside in front of the basilica.
The Cardinal Camerlengo, Kevin Farrell, will again preside inside the basilica at the final rite of interment, together obviously with other cardinals and prelates. The coffin has been set on a stand. I don't want to call it a catafalque because Pope Francis specifically asked that the whole rite be simplified, no catafalque. So it's on a stand, about to be carried inside this beautiful, beautiful basilica.
And if I'm not mistaken, just before his interment, the coffin will be placed for a few moments with the Pope facing the icon of Mary Salus Populi Romani, so that he can say his final goodbye to the Mary to whom he has entrusted himself and the world to so many times.
It truly is a simple coffin. It has a very simple cross engraved in it, a tiny coat of arms, and the seal of the Holy See.
I think it's being shown to the crowd, who, as you can hear, have applauded, and it's our final goodbye now.
Yeah.
Before it's taken in procession into the basilica.
We hear the bells tolling. The Swiss Guards leading the procession.
Always present for the Pope's protection in every moment.
We're hearing the Sistine Chapel Choir there accompany us as the coffin is being brought in procession into the basilica. going through the atrium now into the basilica to be brought before the icon of the Salus Populi Romani before being placed in the tomb that has been prepared. It's a simple tomb bearing only the inscription Franciscus and a reproduction of the late Pope's pastoral cross. There we're seeing the icon of Salus Populi Romani in the chapel that will be next to where Pope Francis will be laid to rest. Which is the icon of Mary, recalling the flowers Pope Francis would bring in homage when he would go there to pray before an apostolic journey or to give thanks or to for special prayers in his many visits there.
I think these must be roses that people have brought, because they were single roses, white roses on long stems, and I think people probably brought those to lay on his coffin close to him.
I think there was a group of people holding them outside the basilica when the coffin was being brought up. And now
as you said, he's saluting Our Lady
and thanking her, I'm sure.
The altar of St. Francis, the tomb's located just near there. We'll be taken to the niche of the side nave between, again, the Pauline Chapel and the altar of St. Francis.
et silicem in fontes